Here we go.
It's the Benjamin Dixon Show.
Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is
not merely peace in our time, but peace in all time.
I have no fear whatsoever of anybody or anything.
Did you think no one was watching?
Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
your mission.
Suppose we go where no man has gone before.
To reclaim the American dream.
To be given the rights of human beings to be afforded equal rights and equal opportunities.
It's the Benjamin Dixon Show. If you're hearing his voice, you're hearing the voice of reason.
You've certainly come to the right place.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Benjamin Dixon Show. I am your host, Benjamin Dixon. It is Wednesday night, November 18, 2015. Thank you so much for joining us. I just literally maybe 3 minutes ago walked in the door, cut on some lights, cut on 5 computers, and here we are just for me to have a conversation with you about all the things that are happening in the political world. I want you to join the conversation. Of course, you can always join us. 857-600-0518 is the number to call in to speak with us live on the air. You can also join us in the chat room on youtube.com. The link is out there. Just go to the YouTube channel and you can join the chat room and we can hang out that way. Or you can go to Spreaker if you're listening live. Either wherever you're listening, you can get in touch with me, or you can tweet me at the BPD Show. A lot of things that are happening in the news. I'm getting a lot of breaking news out of Minneapolis. The protests that are taking place at the 4th precinct. It's going underneath the title of 4th precinct shutdown. Justice for Jamar. A lot of reports of the police militarization, some pictures that are coming out that look very similar to what happened in Ferguson. And so I'll be going through my timeline, trying to find things that are from some good sources that I trust and discuss them. So that's going on now. I did see how do I pronounce her name? Nikiva Levy-Pounds. She's the president of the Minneapolis. I can never say that word. Minneapolis chapter of the NAACP. She's an attorney. She's out there. She was arrested last night, a part of the demonstration, and she's back out there today. So a lot of people out there protesting on behalf of Jamar. And this is all so new. Let me make sure I have Jamar's complete name, but he was shot and killed by the police. Jamar Clark is his name, shot and killed by the police this week. Juxtapose that to what's going on at Dartmouth, what happened at Dartmouth. I believe it was either yesterday or today, actually Monday. It happened on Monday, where Black Lives Matter protesters went inside of the library at Dartmouth and protested, and that protest got somewhat out of hand, to say the least, right? So a lot of things going on that I feel we should definitely talk about. All right. So that being said, let me just sit here and get over here to the comment section, to the chat room. Thanks a lot for everyone joining us this late at night. I just wanted you guys to, sorry for the late start. I was participating in a debate over in Cambridge, on the other side of Boston. And I want to talk about that a little bit because there were some good things that happened at that debate. I went in, the debaters actually changed my mind. And I think that was rare. It's a rare occasion where you go in with one position and you listen to arguments and someone is able to change your mind. So before the end of the hour, if somebody would remind me, I don't have any notes tonight, just going straight off the cuff. I normally don't have notes, a lot of notes, but I do have, topics that I want to talk about written down. That way I can know what I'm remembering. But I don't have anything tonight because I just got off the train, just got off the taxi, just walked in the door, cut on the lights. So let's double back. Let's talk about what's happening in Minneapolis. And I can never, like I said, I can never pronounce that city's name, Minneapolis. Just looking at my timeline, police officers are spraying chemical agents. They are shooting rubber bullets. They are reports that there may be There may be the National Guard showing up on the scene. So it's a lot going on, and I'm pulling up some images so that you can see it for yourself. So what I'm pulling up now, and I'm going to be sharing on YouTube, it's coming straight from Twitter. You can find these images yourself, but I'm just going to share what I see. That way we can kind of discuss it together, so you can see what's happening. The core problem here is another, and you can see police officers in their military gear on top of the buildings. The entire area is lit up. And this is in response to basically an occupation by Black Lives Matter, somewhat similar to Occupy Wall Street. They set up camps. They've been there for days, and they are going underneath the just essentially shutting down the 4th precinct. The 4th precinct shutdown is the hashtag. Let's see what's in that hashtag. Essentially saying that they're not going to let it be business as usual until they get justice for Jamar and they find out what's actually going on. Those of you who are watching on YouTube, you can see how they surrounded the building, and the police officers are responding in kind. Here's the thing. There's 2 problems with that. Let me break away from that screen. 2 problems with this. So long as the police officers keep killing unarmed citizens. Now, Black Lives Matter is focusing on primarily on police officers killing of Black women and Black men, but I've seen them also protest in favor to support white people who have been killed. Like, we're calling out the injustice of police officers taking the lazy route and shooting so that they don't have to, whatever, I don't know, engage in a fist fight sometimes, or engage in a complicated, or ask questions. You know, there are clearly, I think we can all agree that the number of unarmed killed people this year, over 1,000 unarmed people killed in the United States, is ridiculous. Did some of them pose a threat? I'm sure some of them did. Did all of them pose a threat? Absolutely not. I know one in particular who did not pose a threat, and I know there's plenty of names on that list who did not pose a threat, and here they are dead. So long as the police keep operating as business as usual, with business as usual, protest will continue. And I think what's really happening is we're dealing with police officers, a police state, a police environment. We're dealing with police unions. We're dealing with the blue culture, the police culture, where they are really opposed to anyone dictating to them rather, how they must carry themselves. They want to be able. Hang on, let me stop that sentence and start here. They do not want to have to answer to the community. That's why one of the things you see that is shut down a lot are the community review boards and the community panels, because police officers want to operate with impunity. And that would happen. I mean, it happens in any institution. Institutions begin to grow a life of their own that goes in the opposite direction, sometimes contrary to what their original purpose was. Police, and actually now I'm really thinking about my whole premise. Hang on, let me reconsider my premise, because I have to do an if-then statement with what I'm getting ready to say. If the police were originally created to protect and serve, then we can clearly see that there are some components of police culture that run counter to their original purpose. Now, that's a big if, because arguably the police were created not to protect and serve the average American, but to protect and serve the bourgeoisie, right? But I don't want to have that debate, but I must put an if-then statement there, because it is not, I can't definitively say that the police were originally created to protect and serve. That class argument set aside, our expectation of our police today is that they protect and serve the community. That being the case, there are a lot of behaviors, a lot of their culture, a lot of their expectations, and their reticence to be responsible to the community. There's a lot of that happens that runs completely counter to their responsibility to protect and serve. All of that to say this: our expectation of the police today is that they will not, should not, and not be able to get away with killing unarmed citizens. And quite frankly, I don't think that that is a tall order. I think we are creating a class of police officers who are trigger happy because they understand how difficult it is to prosecute a police officer for murder. And even if you prosecute them, they know how difficult it is to actually be found guilty. They're trigger happy. They're either trigger happy because of testosterone and bravado and hubris, or they're trigger happy because they're afraid. Either way it goes, the outcome is over 1,000 citizens, not just Black people, not just men, women, white people, Hispanic people, have been killed by police, unarmed citizens killed. So what we're seeing across the country, even though they are these protests pop up whenever something happens, and we don't see a lot of protests that are consistent even in the absence of a tragedy, but we see protests and we see people who are saying this is not acceptable anymore. We're not going to tolerate this anymore. And every time this happens, we are going to essentially shut it down. And whether you agree with the technique and the tactic, I think we can agree that the number of people killed by police in the United States of America is absurd and obscene. And that has to be a fundamental change in our policing culture. That cannot be the first option. The first option cannot be to shoot an unarmed person. If somebody's charging at you with a gun, then fine, do what you got to do, right? But I've seen instances where somebody was charging at an officer with a knife and the officer refused to kill him. The culture of our police must change. It absolutely must change. Our expectations of the police has changed, and we're not putting up with it anymore. Does that mean that everyone listening to me right now agrees with 100% of what Black Lives Matter is saying and doing? No, right? I don't agree with 100% of what they're saying, what they're doing, but that's besides the point. The fundamental point is, do you agree that there have been entirely too many killings of American citizens who have been unarmed at the hands of police? Whether they are Black or white, if all lives matter, right, and all colors matter, then you should be just as upset when a Black person is killed as a white person. Or you should be just as upset when a Hispanic person is killed as a Black, because it is happening as state-sanctioned summary judgment executions, right? It's happening right on the spot. They're judge, jury, and executioner for over 1,000 citizens this year alone. And we still have a month and a half to go in this year. That is ridiculous. That is absurd. Yes. So I have over in the chat room. Is this a call or do we just listen? No, you have the opportunity to call in 857-600-0518. Anyone who wants to get in the conversation, let me drop this number over here, folks. 857-600-0518. If you want to join the conversation, feel free to call in. Let's take a look over at some of the comments over here before I move to the next topic. Protesters are demanding that the police to release the video and calling for an independent federal investigation. Jonathan Rubin is saying that's why I fully support Black Lives Matter, even if it's a big inconvenience for some politicians and pundits. Protests are always meant to disrupt the dominant paradigm. Absolutely right, Jonathan. I couldn't agree with you more. I want to read a couple more comments here. I have a comment from Omnimorta. There's already a legal precedent that the police are not obligated to protect. I've seen that in a lot of cases, and I'll be interested to see how that plays into this particular case. One more comment from Jonathan. The cops that beat the man in South Florida, Rodney King style, were placed on administrative leave. If that was a private citizen, it would have been an attempted murder. That's the frustrating thing about this. That's one of the most frustrating things about this. The fact that police who have been not necessarily, we can't say that they're guilty yet, but they have done something so bad that they have either been fired or put on administrative leave, that if a citizen did the same exact thing, they would not be fired. They would not be put on administrative leave. They would be immediately arrested. So there are these protections that are built into being a police officer that allows them to get away with things that ordinary citizens cannot get away with. Now, this is not hyperbole. This is not vilifying the police. This is just a matter of fact. There are certain things that police officers, there's certain leniencies that are granted to police officers that would never be granted to ordinary citizens. But that's why, if the investigators, an independent investigator, has found wrongdoing, there should not be instances where a person is just fired. Once you are found wrong once you have been found committing something illegal, then all of those protections that treat you as a special class where you can get away with murder, essentially, all those protections go away, and you need to be arrested just like any other citizen would be. Caller, you are live on the air. What is your name, comment, and or question?
Hey, Ben, this is Cliff.
Cliff, how's it going? Thanks for the call, man. What's on your mind?
I've been listening to the show, been trying to get a call in if I was able to. I just wanted to comment. One thing that I've noticed a lot is, and granted, it's not always about race, but I have seen a huge number of officers who were white and have killed unarmed citizens, and it's like you were saying, there's no conviction.
Mm-hmm.
If there is a trial, if there happens to be a trial, but most of them don't even go to the trial process to see all the facts and have it laid out before a jury to be decided. But not only that, but like you were talking about the police culture of them not wanting to break the silence against each other.
Mm-hmm.
You got to get or call each other out on what's
Mm-hmm.
wrong, what's right. It makes it really hard for a lot of people to decide what is a good cop and what is a bad cop.
Absolutely.
From the aspect of protesters, because if you know that officer A, B, and C have done something, and the other officers who were around them witnessing it did not speak up, did not say anything, well, you're just as guilty as the other officers. And I think that's part of the reason why some of the anti-police brutality protests have kind of gotten a little more aggressive. It's harder to tell who's a good cop, who's a bad cop. And then also with the policemen themselves, they refuse to speak up against each other.
Right.
But it's only the black officers who are being convicted and charged and tried, whereas their white counterparts have been, virtually without punishment.
Yeah, and that's one of the most frustrating things about it, man, is that there's so many examples of how there is a huge racial component to this, right? And then sometimes what happens is when you talk about the racial component, then people who normally see the transgressions, people who normally see the police brutality, people who normally see the police state, all of a sudden, because you identify the racial component, now all of a sudden they can't see it so clearly. Right. But then that case where the young boy, I believe his name was Jeremy. I hate when I can't remember names. The young 6-year-old who was killed in his father's front seat by 2 black officers. Immediately they were arrested. Immediately they were charged. And it's like, if every case of police violence and murder happened that quickly and the arrest happened that quickly, then we would not have all of the protests that we see. But what we find in too many cases is, particularly when it is a white police officer and a black person who's been killed, it takes months. For instance, my friend Corey, they've already fired Officer Newman Raja, whatever you pronounce it. They fired him, but they have not arrested him. So it's like we're a month in and they're still investigating when all the information that they needed was right there in front of them, at least in the first week. So, but something that you said, I want to point out that you said is very important. It is a culture of no snitching. It is a culture of silence that you see the same culture in these gang communities and in the mafia communities where police officers are not going to rat each other out because they have their own little private code.
Exactly.
Yeah. Cliff, thanks. Go ahead.
I want to add one more thing. Something else that really bothers me is you see some of these instances in the bigger cities and even sometimes in the rural areas where it was a clear case of a minority or whoever who was shot by the police unarmed. And, a lot of times people don't realize that these guys are innocent and have not actually done anything, but they get lumped into the same category as someone who might have actually done something, but then was killed anyways while they were unarmed. And so they're kind of lumped all into the same category. And people are quick to forsake their own racial identity and just automatically side with the police. And that, I think, is something kind of frustrating.
Absolutely. I got to applaud you on that one. That is beyond frustrating, man. Cliff, thanks so much for the call, man. This is housekeeping. You're listening live on Spreaker, correct?
Yes.
Okay, great. I want to make sure everything was coming through clear. We had all kind of problems the last couple of weeks, but I think we're back in action. Thanks so much for the call, man. We look forward to hearing from you again.
Anytime.
All right. And I think what Cliff points out is so true. Is there are instances where police officers absolutely have to kill someone because that person is a threat. But what happens is because police officers close down ranks all the time whenever there is a police shooting, it's impossible for the populace, the general public, to delineate between. We can't do it. We can't delineate between good officers, good kills, and bad kills. But there's so many examples of bad kills. Where are all the voices of the police officers who want to protect their profession? What do you find, though? You find them protecting their blue culture. And like the caller Cliff said, forsaking their own ethnicity, their own race, their own background, because they put that blue culture first. Leslie in the chat room had a great idea. She said that all of the police officers should carry liability insurance. I think that's a great idea. That would change. I don't know if that would change the paradigm, but that definitely would. I think that just helps the city out more, right? That kind of puts they can call, what's the word? So the officers will pay the premium, so it's going to hit the officers a little bit, but it protects the city, and the city doesn't have to pay out the settlements, and it comes right from the liability. I think that's a great idea in general. Leslie, let me answer two questions that came up in the chat room. This is from Atlas Taurus. He said, Ben, with that being said, how do you feel about people getting themselves forcibly into vocal altercations with police and then shortly after scream racism or brutality? And he said, by the way, this is Davin. All right, Davin. I think that our police officers should be able to handle people yelling in their faces. I don't think that's too much to ask, because here's the thing. It's frustrating when somebody yells at you and you can't legitimately do anything in return, or you don't really have any power. A police officer can stand still and look in a person dead in their eye while they are yelling in their face, and all the while in his mind realize, I have the authority of the state behind me. I could arrest this person. If they get too out of hand, I can kill this person. That is some power. And with that power comes the responsibility, if I can quote Spider-Man, comes great responsibility that you should be able to handle situations that other people would not handle. Now, Vocal altercations, I have no problem with. I think that's part of protest. I think police should be able to handle that. If there's any physical altercation, I don't think it would even make it to a physical altercation. But if it is, then that changes the entire paradigm. I don't think words should, police officers have to be able to handle words. And we see in so many cases, I'm trying to pull up a picture now. So many cases where people do get in police officers' faces and shout and yell and scream. Here's a classic image. This is the classic image. Everyone knows this image. Let me pull it up on the screen for those of you on YouTube. Here's an image of a white woman literally scream in the officer's mouth. He not only smells this woman's breath, he can see if she had a root canal. This is how close she is to this man's face. Now, in NYPD, now he's frustrated, he's angry, but he's using restraint. Now, if you're going to use restraint in this situation, you damn well better use restraint in every situation. Damn it, I got to make sure I do something here. Hang on, folks. Goodness, housekeeping is always a must. Okay, but yeah, so that's the thing. If you're going to use restraint in one situation, then you have to be able to use restraint in every situation. Look at how restrained he is. Now, you tell me, if this was a black person, do any of us honestly feel, I know I'm not making this about race, but I just want to know your opinion. If this was a black person, do you honestly feel that they would have been able to get that close to that police officer yelling and screaming? I honestly don't believe so. I think their police officers are more trigger happy, less patient, more aggressive with people of color. And that's part of the things that are being protested over in Minneapolis. Let me check a couple more questions here, and then we're going to move to the next topic. I wonder if the police culture is a product of our body politic in general, shifting further and further to conservatism. Conservatism manifests itself differently depending on the institution. That's quite the esoteric question. Let's see. Yes, I have to agree with you. Again, Patrick, I have to agree with you on that one. The reason I agree with you is because we're at a pivotal point where we are going to have to decide what our police forces are genuinely here to do. Are they here to protect the status quo? Are they here to protect the property of people? Right? That's how you saw people so upset that CVS burned down, but not upset that that they killed. There's so many people who were killed. Freddie Gray. I can't even remember all the names of the people who were killed. Right? So everyone was so upset that the CVS burned down, and fewer people were upset about Freddie Gray being killed. So we're at a pivotal point in our culture, our collective body politic, like you called it, or as it's called, Patrick, that we're trying to decide and determine the trajectory of our relationship with the police. Are the police simply here to protect property, and particularly the property of the status quo? Or are they here to protect and serve the people, all races, all faiths, all identities, all genders, all across the board? And I think we are coming out of a period of silent acquiescence where things were happening and we didn't see it often. And whenever we did see it, people were generally silent about it because we just assumed that person had to do something wrong. But now in the age of social media, there are so many accounts, we're able to relay the stories. This is why, listen, I talk a lot about two people in particular, or I mention them from time to time. DeRay. Let me tell you why DeRay is important in this particular movement, despite all the people who don't like him. He's important because he's facilitating a conversation and he's relaying the messages and the stories of people all across the country. He's magnifying, he's amplifying them, right? So the stories that would be quiet, that most people would not hear, DeRay is able to amplify it and create an entire narrative that we did not have in another generation, you know, on the back of social media, on the back of Twitter, right? It's clearly a result of Twitter, but it's also his usage of Twitter. Now the stories can reverberate across the country, and now we see one narrative. Whereas before social media, before Twitter, we couldn't see all of the different pieces in their respective places. All we could see was an occasional news report about a shooting in our particular town, right? But very rarely did a shooting become national news. And now we have the ability to look at all of the different shootings, and we can look at those 1,000 people who have been killed, 1,000 unarmed people killed by the police this year. We look at that and we're able to connect the dots and say, this is more than a trend. This is an epidemic. And we're no longer satisfied with that epidemic. And so this is why it's a pivotal time. And this is why Black Lives Matter is so important, whether you like them or not, because they are doing more on the issue of police violence than even the police state warriors, right? The people who are out there, you know, with all the thousands of videos and commentary and blog posts about police violence and statistics. Well, Black Lives Matter, they have weaponized, I probably shouldn't use that phrase since they already think they're terrorists, right? But they have mobilized this awareness of police violence, and they are hitting the streets to make a change about it. To make a change about it. Yeah, that's proper English. Yeah, so that's why it's important. And here's the solution. It is an easy solution. If you stop killing unarmed people, then the protest would necessarily go away, because they're out there protesting the killings of unarmed people. And so what we're saying is, even if this person is violent, even if this person needs to go to jail, even if they are guilty, even if they're a hulking, you know, I don't even want to use that language, but let's just say that they are a big dominating figure and you were afraid for your life because they were just so big. If they are unarmed, you have an advantage over them. You have the ability to take their life. You have the responsibility, therefore, to do something first that would not require you. I'm not telling you to sit out there and wait to get killed. If somebody pulls a gun on you, fine. I don't think anybody in my chat room, I don't think anybody on Twitter would argue that if somebody pulled a gun on a police officer, that police officer should not pull and fire and kill that person as quickly as possible. Anyone who disagrees with that is unreasonable. If a person pulls a gun on a police officer, then the officers absolutely need to very quickly, don't ask questions. If the gun is on the scene, pop, pop, bang, bang, they're dead. But there have been hundreds upon hundreds of people who had, one girl had, I think she threw a steak at a police officer. The Hispanic girl who was killed this year, young 16-year-old girl, one of them threw a piece of meat. I don't know if it was the white girl. I don't even know their names because there's so many. I just know their stories, right? Ridiculous. You had just go read the stories yourself, and you'll see how many absurd situations where police officers have killed people who did not have a weapon. Or somebody with a screwdriver, the mentally ill guy, the guy who had a mentally challenged guy who had a screwdriver, and he came out of the house and the police officers shot and killed him. The man had a screwdriver. Now, listen, if a screwdriver in the hands of Jason Bourne is not a screwdriver in the hands of Ben Dixon, you do not have to fear a screwdriver in the hands of Ben Dixon. You do have to fear. So unless you think you're dealing with a professionally trained CIA assassin, if that's the case, then you're going to start killing people with pencils in their hand and pens in their hand. The level of absurdity, if we just allow it to keep going, it will continue to go down a slippery slope. And what we're saying is stop killing unarmed people. Now, before I go to a break and just take a mental break and shift gears, I was watching a video. I'm gonna do a hard shift here, guys. Hard shift. I was watching a very sad video, broke my heart, actually had me in tears, of the funeral home that was preparing the body of Tyshawn Lee. That's the 9-year-old boy who was who was assassinated, was executed, shot in the temple in both sides. Like they said he was shot in both temples, which means to me that he had to be shot on both sides. So I'm trying to figure out how and why they would even, but I had to stop thinking, and I just watched the video where they were preparing his body. And it was a very respectful video, but still a very sad video, right? They didn't show his face. They just showed, his body, his casket, and they showed the funeral. It was a very painful video to see. And I thought about how much I despise those gang members. I won't say all gang members, probably most gang members, but absolutely those gang members who are so barbaric that they would kill children or kill another human being, execution style. How much I despise them. And I know I did this wonderful video about how I wanted them to be arrested and arrested properly. But once I saw that video of Tyshawn Lee, I was like, you know what? I changed my mind. Always reserve the right to change your mind. I want, in a perfect world, which we will never have, but if I had a world to build, I would take every gun happy, trigger happy police officer who wants to shoot and kill people. I would take them all and put them on the south side of Chicago, where there are plenty of people with guns, so they can stop killing all of the unarmed people and go to the cities where all the people have guns, go to the areas, go to the hoods, go to wherever they are. I don't care if it's a black gang, I don't care if it's a white gang, a Hispanic gang, I don't care wherever these criminals are. Get your most trigger happy cop who just wants to shoot somebody and flood those communities where you have all of these bastards out there killing people with drugs, killing people with guns, killing people, killing children, execution style. Take all your cops there so that we won't have to protest anything, because you won't be shooting unarmed people. You'll be shooting people with a lot of guns. And I think that'll fix the problems. We won't need Black Lives Matter anymore. And we wouldn't need all of the father flaggers and all the people who are having to preach and funeralize all of these children who have been killed by these gang members. All right, folks, I'm going to take a break. When I come back, we'll do something a little more lighthearted. All right, take it easy. I will be back.
So you get nothing.
Yeah.
You lose. Good day, sir.
Well, that was obviously the wrong clip. Let me find the more complete. I actually don't even know where it is. I'm trying to give you guys well, hell. Maybe we should just do silence or something. I don't know. I just need to hang on. Let me look over a little harder. There it is. Over in the corner. I got to take a break. Call in 857-600-0518. This is the Benjamin Dixon Show. We'll be back after this. What's going on, everyone? This is Benjamin Dixon, and I wanted to take a minute to tell you how you can support the Benjamin Dixon Show. One thing I've learned over the last few months is that it is impossible for us to do this without you. Every time you click on a link, every time you read an article, every time you share a podcast or share a YouTube video, you are absolutely supporting our show. And without you, it's simply impossible. But there's another way you can support us. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com and register for our blog. You will be directly contributing to the success of the Benjamin Dixon Show by registering for our blog. You will help us increase our audience and increase our reach. Remember, every click counts, every subscribe counts, and every share counts. So go over to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com, click on the Contact Us tab, and register for our blog today. There is a radical, violent revolution taking place in America right now, figuratively speaking, where we are ripping from the status quo the very notion that they have the right to define the status quo. We are ripping it from them. We are telling them that they no longer get to decide what America is going to look like. And that is terrifying for a lot of people. That is downright terrifying when someone comes into your home only to help you to understand that your home is not yours in isolation, that we share this home equally, and that we have the right to be comfortable in this home just as much right as you have to be comfortable, so that a white Christian straight man, the comfort that he feels in America will be experienced by the gay black woman and every other intersection that has been erased. That, my friends, that is a revolution if I have ever seen one. That is something, that is the next stage of evolution in America.
Welcome back to the Benjamin Dixon Show.
Ben Dixon.
He's obviously he's a radio show host or something like that.
You're damn right I am. Hey, all right, folks. Welcome back. All right, so just reading a few more comments on my last section. Sorry, folks, I heard a little anomaly. Jonathan Rubin says, I disagree with you on that, Ben. Resist the temptation for revenge, especially because the cops will take advantage of the situation and will look for an excuse for a bloodlust. I don't disagree with you. My first position, I'm going to be honest with you, my first position on what happened in Chicago and what continuously happens with black on black crime, and I don't hear about white on white crime as much, but we know it's happening at the same rate. It's happening at an 85% rate. Black on black crime is like a 93% rate. So that's almost, it's almost in parity. My first reaction to it was, let's handle it properly. But I've got a son who's going to be that age soon, and I can't say that I'm bigger than when I saw the video of them preparing that boy's body for burial. It kind of changes your perspective. There is a theologian, I don't know if it's Thomas Aquinas or St. Augustine, one of those two. Actually, I'm paraphrasing. They essentially said that some people just need to be killed. And it's coming from great theologians. But there are some people who are dangerous, who are evil, who the world would be better without. And so I'm at war with myself on that. I have to fight myself on a regular basis. So I'm not saying that I'm the most, I'm not saying that I'm right about it. I'm just saying that's how I feel. And I feel that way with the terrorists and in Paris. I feel that way with the terrorists who executed people in Beirut. I feel that way about Boko Haram. I feel that way about the what happened in Kenya. When people are brutish and ruthless, I feel willing to sacrifice that part of my humanity to rid humanity of them. So I'm not always right, and I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just saying that's just how I feel right about now. All right, folks, let's shift gears. Boom, boom. Okay, let's look at a couple of things. I'm trying to decide which way I want to go. So there's Raphael Ted Cruz. Let's go there. Raphael Ted Cruz. Did you know his name was Raphael? That he changed his name, or he goes underneath Ted, but when they won't ever happen, it won't ever happen. But let's say in an alternate universe that he was sworn into the presidency, they wouldn't say Ted Cruz, they would say Raphael Cruz. I learned a little bit more about him today because of his little stunt where he challenged President Obama to a debate and said, come say it to my face. Come say it to my face, President Obama. I don't know if you guys have seen it. Let me see if I can pull it up for you. But essentially, he was telling saying to President Obama. President Obama criticized, he didn't call Ted Cruz out by name, but he called him out by repeating his words, where Ted Cruz said that we should only allow Christian Syrians in, not Muslim Syrians in. And President Obama rightfully slammed that idea, that notion that we're going to make a religious test for entrance into the United States of America. That's even more obscene than making a religious test for someone to run for president. And so it is right for the president of the United States to set it clear and set it straight that we will not use a religious test for entry to refugees who are in a time of desperate need. Raphael got all butthurt and decided to throw a challenge out to President Obama, essentially saying, come say it to my face. And because of that, you know, I started just, you know, normally I try to ignore Ted Cruz. I try to ignore him because, because essentially he's you have to be a special kind of stupid to support Ted Cruz. I'm sorry, you do. There's nothing redeeming about him. He is the most pessimistic, most dreary, most depressing politician there is in the first place. Two, he lies incessantly. If you look at PolitiFact and look at all of his statements that he's made on President Obama over in his career, 85% of his statements that have been evaluated are lies, are at a minimum half true down to pants on fire, right? So he's a dreary, woe is me, end of the world politician. He is an incessant liar, and he's just all around decidedly lame. You know, it's just something about his character and demeanor that is just rather lame. And so, you know, I never really pay lame people attention because it's just, I'm allergic to it. And I didn't want to catch his lameness. But he brought himself to the limelight again today. And I want to play this clip. I have it right over here. So I'll play it and let you guys see it here on YouTube. But this is him throwing a challenge out to President Obama. This is from NBC News by way of Talking Points memo. Let's listen in.
Well, I will say it's fairly remarkable that President Obama has now chosen 2 days in a row to attack me directly. He just called me offensive the day before. He called me un-American. You know, I think that's really quite rich that he chose to make both of those insults on foreign soil. While he was abroad, attacking me and attacking everyone else in this country who believes we should not be bringing in tens of thousands of Syrian Muslim refugees, that the Obama administration cannot vet to determine whether or not they are ISIS terrorists. I got to tell you,
No, hold on. Let me stop him there. The administration is very capable. Let me stop the lies. The administration is very capable of vetting. There is an 11 and 12-month process for someone to get into the United States. The administration is very capable of vetting. Are they 100% able to vet every single person fully? Probably not, but they are very capable of weeding out where they need to weed out. So this is just him fear mongering, but let him keep, you know, doing what Ted Cruz does. Here he is.
It's utterly unbefitting of a president to be engaging in those kind of personal insults and attacks. And, you know, he talked about how he was belittling the Republican field as scared. Well, let me suggest something, Mr. President. If you want to insult me, you can do it overseas. You can do it in Turkey. You can do it in foreign countries. But I would encourage you, Mr. President, come back and insult me to my face.
Listen, little man. Listen, Ted Cruz, you small, insignificant little person. This is not even about President Obama. This is about anybody. You do not register on a scale for people to be fearful of. People are not intimidated by your tone, by your demeanor, by your disposition, by your words, by your politics. You're nothing to be feared. In fact, I think you're something to be laughed at. But most of all, you don't want to fuck with President Obama. Let's keep listening to this asshole. Ted Cruz.
Let's have a debate on Syrian refugees right now. We can do it anywhere you want. I prefer it in the United States and not overseas where you're making the insults. It's easy to toss a cheap insult when no one can respond. But let's have a debate. We'll do it on any station. I'm sure any one of the TV stations would be glad to host it. And let's have a debate on your refugee policy.
All right, so he wants to have Eddie Monster. That's what I'm looking for. Okay, so he wants to have a debate with President Obama. So essentially, he's milking this for all he can. I would say excuse the F-bomb, but I meant it, so it is what it is. He wants to milk this for all the attention he can because he needs all the attention he can that he can muster up. So I decided to look up Ted Cruz and just to learn a little bit more about him, because I've done as much as I to ignore him. Just want to show you his doppelganger, Ted Cruz and Eddie Monster. So Ted Cruz was actually born Rafael Cruz. Everyone knows that he was born in Canada. So he is as much an American citizen as President Obama. His mother, Obama's mother, they were legal citizens outside of the country at the time of their son's birth, two immigrants, or one who was a student and one who was an immigrant, foreign immigrant and a foreign student. So if Ted Cruz is a natural born citizen, then President Obama, of course, now we knew that, but Ted Cruz was a birther, and so was all the rest of the Republican Party. But that's besides the point. Did you all know that Ted Cruz's father was a pro-Castro national? That was new. Now that I did not know. So here you have a son of an immigrant born outside of the country. His father was a pro-Castro rebel, pro-Castro rebel, running for president of the United States, lambasting refugees. His father had to flee Cuba. And now he's essentially saying that, not essentially, he is explicitly saying that we should not accept these refugees because these refugees are Muslims and these refugees could be a threat to the United States. I wonder if anyone ever sat and thought about the fact that Ted Cruz's father was a communist, was fighting for the communist, the true communist, the command economy communist, not this soft socialist communist that they throw around here, where we're really just talking about fixing trickle-down economics and returning to an Eisenhower era economic system. No, not that. We're talking about real communism, where there's a command economy and everything is state-owned and state-sanctioned. Ted Cruz's father was fighting on the side of that paradigm, had to flee, came to America as a refugee, and now this guy wants to make a religious test for all refugees. The worst part about this entire thing for me is the fact that we even have to talk about it, because people like this have ascended so high in the Republican Party that their asinine ideas become national news. That is the most ridiculous thing. And it just shows you, I really hate to devolve to the point where you simply declare that people are idiots, but you have to be a special type of stupid to be able to look and listen at this guy, Ted Cruz, and believe that he has any substance. The scary part about it is that there are people who are so convinced that Ted Cruz would be the very best thing for the United States of America. They think he's brilliant. They think he's charismatic. They think he is the next best thing since Ronald Reagan. There are a lot of people who are convinced of this. And that to me is the biggest tragedy, because that shows you just how out of touch this modern American system of propaganda and news, 24-hour news cycle has become. It shows you how ridiculous and how absurd it has become. Because here's your metric. There is not, Ronald Reagan would not hire Ted Cruz to shine his shoes. William F. Buckley would laugh this imbecile to scorn. Barry Goldwater would not allow him. He would consider Jerry Falwell a great conservative compared to Ted Cruz. He would kick Ted Cruz in the ass and not Jerry Falwell. This is how extreme and how ignorant and how ridiculous our political system has become that we're actually having to have a conversation about making a religious test for entrance into the United States of America. I don't. Is it our Frankenstein? Is it our fault? Did we create this? I mean, is it the fact that maybe it's our fault that we need sensationalization for us to be mobilized and to get interested in the news, right? Maybe it's that, maybe that's the beginning of this entire era of Ben Carson's, Donald Trump's, and Ted Cruz's. Because we as a body politic need our news to be sensationalized. And once they figure that out, they start sensationalizing everything. And once they start sensationalizing everything, then all of a sudden, people like Ted Cruz, Donald Trump, and Ben Carson don't look so ridiculous to some people, because that's all they get all day long on Fox News is ridiculous and sensationalized. And so now half the country really are considering people like Ben Carson, who in any regular conversation, we would consider him to be the village idiot of politics. Yes, he was a brilliant man in I don't know. We have to go check his records now, because you can't be so brilliant and then so dumb. But maybe it's our fault, because we needed everything to be sensationalized. And now we have a Ben Carson who can get out there and say the most ridiculous things. You can get a person like Donald Trump who can get out there and say the most offensive things, and the more offensive things he says, the further he goes in the ratings, in the polls. And then you get people like Ted Cruz, who is, if nothing else, he is a weasel. I think that's probably the very best way to describe him. I don't need any fancy words. Ted Cruz is a weasel that most people would not buy a used car from. And yet we have created such a sensationalized, ridiculous, acrimonious environment through our media that now he's an actual consideration to be the president of the United States. It would be a time where he couldn't even get on the state level, let alone a state senator. I think shame on us, which brings me full circle. I remembered myself. I'm going to close with this. I went to a debate tonight. I didn't participate. I participated last time because, you know me, if I'm passionate about something, I'll just jump out there and talk about it. I went to a debate tonight, and the debate was on marijuana, legalizing marijuana here in Massachusetts. And it was a pub debate, so everybody was drinking and we're just having a good time. But the arguments were interesting. I went in, and I'm a proponent of legalizing marijuana, because why not? I don't care. I used to smoke. I don't really smoke anymore. It don't matter, making a difference to me. Legalize it, make some money off of it. There's a lot of things. There's a lot of reasons I think that you should legalize it. I went in on that side and I listened to the arguments, and they changed my mind. I'm no longer in favor of legalizing marijuana for the reasons, here's the caveat, for the reasons that the affirmative side were giving. To make it plain, the people who were in favor of legalizing essentially said that we could raise taxes for it and we could fix our boss, the T. We could fix the MBTA system, or our subway system. We could eliminate this injustice of white people not getting arrested and black people getting arrested 4 times as many times as white people over marijuana. This injustice, and we can use the money to help out with all these other programs. So they laid out all these things that the first time I heard it, I was like, you know what? That's good. Yeah, that's good. But then the opposition came up. And this does tie back into Fox News and Ted Cruz and all of them. So just stay with me a little bit while I work my rhetorical jujitsu here. So the opposition came up, and I listened, and they said, wait a minute. why should we use marijuana tax to fix something that we should be fixing anyway? That was number one. And I was like, whoa, good point. Then number two, he said, why should we legalize marijuana to get rid of the injustices that we see in the Black community? He said, getting rid of marijuana or making marijuana legal does not fix the injustice. It just removes the opportunity for that injustice to be displayed. And he didn't even say it that good, but that's what I heard. I heard it that good. And it went off like a lightning bulb. I'm like, all of the reasons that the people on my side were giving me to support the legalization of marijuana, I listened to the opposition and their argument was more sound. Their argument was well put together. Their argument wasn't bombastic. It wasn't loud. It was just succinct, saying that we should not put the burden of fixing our societal problems on the legalization of marijuana. Now, this is just a microcosm. This is just a small example, but it resonated with me, and it reminded me that sometimes we do things with good intentions, but we don't fix the problem. And so because of that, I realigned my vote and I voted with the opposition, saying that we should not legalize marijuana in that context, right? I'm still in favor for legalizing marijuana, but we shouldn't legalize marijuana in order to raise tax revenues. No, we should not legalize marijuana in order to bring down the injustices of Black people being arrested 4 times to 1. No, address the actual problem. Address the police officers, address the injustice, the systemic racism, and if we want our subway system, pay for it ourselves. Now, I said all that to say this. Maybe if they could convince somebody who is as dogmatic as me, maybe there is an opportunity for our country, because I'm as stubborn as they come. Maybe there is an opportunity for our country if we begin to use logic and sound arguments and sound reason to actually engage people in a thinking process. And the responsibility to actually begin that conversation has to fall on the media. It absolutely has to start there, because if the media wants the respect, if the media wants the admiration and the respect of journalism and all of their First Amendment rights to be and have access to all the avenues of government and all the avenues of society, then they need to be the ones to help elevate the conversation above this ridiculousness that we're living in, above this hyperpolarized, sensationalized paradigm that we live in. The media cannot continue to play to the lowest common denominator among us. And I think if anyone has a responsibility, it is they who have the responsibility of bringing sound arguments. Now, whether you agree with, my position on the marijuana thing, that's besides the point. The point is that I think there are enough sane people in the world, and I could just be a naive ass, but I think people, even if we're not in the majority, we still need to communicate and find people who can at least hear sound arguments and reconsider their positions based on sound arguments. Never mind the Neanderthals. We will always have a Ted Cruz. We will always have Ben Carsons. We will always have Donald Trumps. Never mind the Neanderthals. Let's go and find the people who can listen to sound arguments and reconsider based upon new information. That would just be an idealistic world, but we don't live in an idealistic world. And because we don't, then I have to fight fire with fire. All right, let me read a couple comments real quick. And we're going to get out of here. Oh, yeah, I did see that article, Melissa. Advisors of Dr. Carson say that he is not fit to be president. I did see that article. They're saying that Carson can't quite get a grasp on foreign policy. I have inside sources who, when I say I have inside sources, I really have an inside source, singular, who told me that, that Carson just does not have the capacity. I'll leave it at that. Let's read a couple more questions. Trump basically said he would be open to closing a mosque. Talk about an authoritarian bigot. Absolutely. I mean, that's the type of absurdity that no conservative in American history up until this election cycle, even what Trump is saying now would not have been accepted in the last election cycle. And that's how ridiculous we become. Atlas, state revenue by 4 times. We should legalize it because it will cut crime by eliminating black market for it. If anything, Jonathan, that is, to me, there's 2 reasons. One, I think people should be able to do with their body whatever they please. I don't think the government should be regulating. I think we should decriminalize, at a minimum, decriminalize all drugs. People should be able to do what they want to with their bodies. That's the libertarian in me. But at a bare minimum, we realize that as soon as we legalize marijuana, that we eliminate the black market and it becomes a commodity, something that people aren't going to kill over. The next comment, Atlas, if you haven't been looking and say legalized marijuana is a must. I disagree. Drug dealers don't check IDs. Legal drugs will help keep them out of the hands of kids. Absolutely, Dust Puppy. That's the whole point. That's another reason I support the legalization. That's pretty much it. And so, like I said, I'm still all in favor for I'm all in favor for the legalization of marijuana, but it's very nuanced, not very nuanced. It's just one level of nuance. I'm not in favor for legalizing marijuana for the reasons that the team that was arguing the affirmative gave, right? When I first heard it, I was like, yeah, that's cool. But then when I heard the opposition and I heard the opposition had better logic and better reasoning, I was like, you know what? I can no longer support it on the reasons that they gave. But on the reasons that you guys gave in the chat room, I still support the legalization of marijuana. Folks, thanks for coming and hanging out with me late. I'll see you guys tomorrow. And I think we're getting closer and closer and closer to me doing a longer show, hour and a half, maybe, hey, one day, 2 hours. Peace. This is the Benjamin Dixon Show.
And until that moment comes, when we, the Americans, are able to accept the fact that on that continent we are trying to forge a new identity for which we need each other, that I am not a ward of America. I am one of the people who built the country. Until this moment.
And we are brothers. It's not a question of Jews or Christians or Muslims. We're all in the same boat.
We need each other.
Love is a condition so powerful. It may be that which holds the stars in the firmament.
Until this moment.
Love.
Until this moment.
Love.
Until this moment.
I come to you today to say that we can build a newer and better nation. I say we can do so, that we must do so, and that we will do so.
You've tuned in to The Benjamin Dixon Show. Visit us online at www.thebenjamindixonshow.com.